To begin, you're going to want to pour some of your pigment into the center of your grinding plate. I'm using about 2 ounces or 50 grams. Use your palette knife to create a hole in the center of your pigment. Now begin to add the cold pressed linseed oil into the hole you just created. Using the palette knife, begin to stir the linseed oil into the pigment. For now, we're just trying to get the consistency correct. As you can see, mine is a little too dry, so I'm adding more linseed oil into the mix. You can add more pigment or linseed oil depending on if your solution's too wet or too dry. Keep stirring until the powdered pigment is fully mixed in with the linseed oil. The consistency is totally up to you. Some artists like their paint to be a little more runny, while some prefer it to be a little firmer. Once the quality of the paint is where you'd like it, you can begin to use the glass muller to grind it further. Grind in figure eights or small circles, taking care to wipe the excess paint off the muller. Use your palette knife to scrape the paint back to the middle. Continue this process of grinding the paint and then scraping back to the middle until it's consistent in look and feel. Now we're ready to bottle our paint. I found a great technique from a French video called the grinding of pigments. We're going to use this technique to get the paint into the aluminum tube. Using the palette knife, take the paint from the grinding plate and put it onto a disposable palette. You're going to want to form almost a line, keeping one end of the paint near the edge of the paper. Roll the palette and insert it into the back of the empty paint tube. Use a glass bottle or another cylindrical object to roll up the palette, pushing the paint into the empty paint tube. Pinch off the end of the palette, taking care to remove the excess paint and add it into the paint tube. Tap it a few times on the top to push the paint to the front of the paint tube. Open up the disposable palette and use the palette knife to scrape off any excess paint. Sealing the back of the paint tube is an important final step. I'm using the edge of a palette knife to create a sharp, clean edge that I'll fold over. I usually fold about 3 to 4 times to ensure that it is sealed. Now your paint is all set and ready to use. I'm including a final step showing you how to make a beautiful label for your new paint. Take an excess piece of gessoed canvas and cut it to size. I'm using about a 1/2 inch by 5 inches. Coat the back with rubber cement. Wrap it around the top of the paint tube and let it sit to dry for 15 minutes. Use some of your new paint to paint the label. Now your paint has a beautiful home. It looks as good inside the tube as it will when you use it. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Leave your comments below. I'd love to hear about how you're